Hey now, and welcome to episode 36 of the Help Find the Others podcast. If you've been here all along, welcome back. But if this is your first time listening to us, well then welcome. I'm your host, Rubin, and my co-host Stan is on the line. How you doing, buddy?
Doing great, man.
Awesome. So, this is going to be our last episode of the podcast for 2019, and we are diving right into 2020. And Stan and I, we don't have a guest tonight. We just wanted to come on and I guess kind of talk reflective about the last year and the last decade, and looking forward to the next year and the next decade, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm a big holidays guy, so I do want to say happy holidays to everyone. We're recording this on the night of the 20th, so we'll be releasing it on the 28th, but Christmas hasn't come yet. So Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, all that stuff that's coming up. And I guess just cheers and thanks for rocking with us for 36 episodes. It's crazy that this all started with just you live streaming and me tagging along to a live stream and just hitting you up like 2 times about a podcast. Next thing you know, we're recording episodes, and it's been like over a year now.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really I love the community that's come around it, with our Discord server and the emails and everything that we get, and we have a voicemail to go through tonight, like it's just anytime anyone reaches out and is just like, hey, I'm listening, I hear you, even if you don't have anything, even if you're not trying to come on the podcast, or you don't have anything interesting to you don't want to tell people about or whatever, like just letting us know and emailing us is huge. Like that's I don't really look at like the metrics of like our downloads and listens and unique listens and length of listening, or the metrics that you can break all the podcast stuff down to, but I really feel the energy that comes at us, and we get that by people reaching out,
Yeah. And one of the ideas that you were telling me about of the podcaster that you've been listening to recently, her name's Jessa, right? Or Jessa Reed?
Yeah, Jessa Reed.
About how everybody comes into other people's lives for a reason, and we're intersecting and crossing each other's paths, and there's something to that. And I think that, I think I talked to you about this, I'm not sure on record or not, but just how we're putting this beacon out and other people are sending their beacon back. And there's something there. And I feel like I'm learning from everybody that comes into the Discord or emails us or comes on the show. And I'm learning from, or YouTube comments, everyone. And it's cool to know that it's just all we had to do was really just point that magnet out, and the rest would work itself out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's been one of the biggest lessons I've learned about life in the past, a couple of years of doing it, is like, you can feel so alone in the world if you have shit you want to talk about that most, normies don't want to talk about. And, I've like you said, it started with me just doing a video. And I never wanted to be, one of the go-to psychedelic people on YouTube with millions of hits and whatever. Like, I think I've stuck pretty true to my original mission statement of like, this isn't about me. Now, I don't mind. Yeah. You and I doing the podcast, and we are the hosts, and then there's guests that come on, and we're the main figures of that. Or, the videos are just a video diary that I'm doing. I don't mind that, but it's not like I wanted to like create a following. I wanted to create a community, and I really feel like we've stuck with that this year, and I hope to continue that into next year.
Yeah. And it's not like you're a gatekeeper or we are a gatekeeper in the podcast, that we have. Anybody can come on, anybody can share their story. And that's something that I don't really see, and it is for the people that don't have somebody to talk to about these type of things, or even outside of anything we've talked about. If you don't have somebody to talk to, come on the show. And I don't know, it's really cool. And that's what attracted me to your initial message as well, even before, we got to know each other and everything.
Yeah.
And you definitely stayed true to that, that has not changed. And I think that's kind of like what is at the root of this community, is that always welcoming, all inclusive message that anybody can join in and be a part of.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and you have people that just like do the rounds. They might talk about the same things, but it's like, they're a comedian or a writer or a musician or whatever, and they just kind of do the rounds, right, of like, podcasts, like, and so like I like having our little beacon out there of like Joe Schmo that fucking works at the dairy factory in Canada, or I mean, not to call Adam out, but you know what I'm saying? It's like like we've just had like kind of normal fucking people on, that have an awesome insight into not only psychedelics. Like, I know that's the backdrop of our show, but like we've gotten such a wide range of interests and stories and insight, that I'm really impressed with that. Like we're not just like we're not this podcast. It's like, yeah, drugs, man. Like it's like we talk about real things, I think. And I know that the combination of that mixed with the combination of our guests are just normal everyday people that nobody knows who they are, limits our the range of those analytics I was mentioning before, of like,
sure, yeah,
like I like we probably to grow those analytics we could probably have a different focus, but I really like the way we're doing it, and I guess the whole point of this part of the conversation is just to tell people that like we plan on continuing that, we're like that we're not going to be selling out and having commercials for hims.com or
me undies.
Yeah, so like it's not that's not our goal with all this. So just going into 2020, just trying to keep chugging along. Honestly, still open to new guests, and like anyone that sends an email is probably going to get on with a rather quickness. But also our last episode with Tyson being the first one where we revisited a guest, we're probably I think that's really good, and it felt really good. And 2020 is going to see a lot of recycling guests, but that's not because of like interest running out in coming on the show. It's more like, damn, these people it was a really good talk, and we need to see what's up again,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of our guests, I feel, come on the show. A lot of the psychedelic guests come on the show right after a trip or recently after a trip, when you're kind of riding that very high wave, and you want to talk to everybody about this, and you can find communities like this that exist. But when the roller coaster ride goes back down, I feel like that's when it's the best time to reach back out to these people and reconnect them to what their initial message was. We've even experienced that, with people emailing us that have been on the show before, and just reaching out to them and saying like, hey, how are you doing? Gives them a second chance to re-listen to their episode and remind themselves of that high that they were on, and that's achievable every day if they choose to, So like giving that year of breathing space, or 6 months, or however long it is until they come back on. I think there's so many changes in their mood, their mentality, in their life, the external, internal world of their life, that it's going to make for a brand new episode, a brand new story. It'll be great. Like I'm already looking forward to, 5, 6, 10 guests that I already know that I want to have back on and see how they're doing.
Yeah. And, like I felt in our last episode with Tyson that like our first episode was him telling his story, and like,
yeah.
And it's a great story. And like, we just got to know who he was. And I feel like the last episode, like not only did things change and there's some catching up to do, but we got a little bit more to like, okay, we know who you are. How do you think about this? And so like to have that round 2 with guests, to not only catch up to what may have changed, just to dig a little deeper too,
Yeah.
And we've talked about what guests, Stan and I have talked about what guests to have back on. And I definitely, maybe we'll put a poll on the Discord server, or, definitely you can email us, at any time. If there's let me know what guest you want to have back on. But like I definitely, our first guest was Kenny. I'm going to reach out to him and try to have him back on. A guest that I thought was really interesting was Josh, and he had so much stories to tell about about his experiences.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have enough time to get into what he thought that all fucking meant, so it's like a round 2 with him, I feel would be really good. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to next year to circling back around to some of these people that, just to have a more in-depth conversation with them, so definitely if you were thinking of being on the podcast, send us an email. I'm not saying we're not going to do new guests, but, we're definitely going to have in the next year a lot more, round 2s of guests, is I guess what I'm saying.
Yeah. And we also have some other ideas like of things. Hopefully, if there's more time for videos and things like that, that'd be awesome. But I also want to try to do a live show for Patreon supporters at some point next year, and we'll have a live call-in line so that you can just join the show in the middle of it, just to give people incentive to join the Patreon, but also, I guess just reach out, because sometimes the Discord environment is a little bit rocky for people that aren't tech savvy. And, calling a phone numbers, everybody knows how to do that. So I think that's something definitely looking forward to. I think videos will be great, podcast episodes, clips. And I don't know, I think one thing that this episode or this podcast has showed me in communicating with you is that you kind of just have to see where it goes and not have such a rigid outlook of it, and new things will sprout out of it. We talked about it last episode, about the comfortability of just saying yes or no to things that you're used to saying yes or no to. Mm-hmm. And that just, sets up that comfort environment, but it also it's not conducive to growth. So with this, I'm kind of just putting in the work, editing the podcast, editing the clips, uploading it. But in terms of like a formulaic approach of scheduling or, new things, new videos, new concepts, I'm just letting those happen as they may, and doing things that I would enjoy, just because I know before I reached out to you, I was a fan of the show. So I have in my opinion, a good radar of if I would like it. I'm assuming the rest of the fan base would like it, because I am a fan at the end of the day, So I think the live call-in thing, I think that could be really cool to do.
Yeah. No, I think, I wish, and we haven't done it in a while, but even the voice channel on Discord, like if there was a way to record that in good quality and like put that out as episode, anything that is like more live involvement and not like, just a podcast, I think is cool. I don't know. I mean, and again, if anyone has any suggestions of like what you want help find the others to evolve into, like, this is all of us. It's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just Stan and I, and it's a community. So, I, like you said, I do want to get back to doing more videos. Hopefully, I don't know. My job is month to month, like as far as like what they're telling us, time's going to be and stuff like that. And hopefully I'm going to get to
camera.
I got to get a better camera and that setup. But also, I am going to only work 4 days a week at some point next year. And, the sooner the better in my employer's eyes, but also I enjoy the overtime. So, I'm not in too big a rush, but that being said, I'm going to have like either a Monday or a Friday every week. While my kids are at school, that I can record videos.
Yeah.
And, I may not always have a topic, but I'm thinking, if I'm doing a weekly thing, I don't need to have a topic, like it can be a current events, like, the week review with Rubin or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like just kind of a random thing that's just me on camera. Now I'm thinking if I get a camera that's not, that records to a disc or whatever, or a card, that I don't need to be hooked up to my computer, I may be putting out videos that don't have the backdrop because I may go out to the woods and do it, or do it at work, or whatever. So, I definitely, I know people want to see more videos from me. But yeah, I mean, it's been part time, but part just like, I try to have these like grand ideas for the videos that I spend like 2 hours trying to get, doing 10 takes, trying to get my point across, and then being like, fuck it, and not putting it out. Like, y'all don't even know how many, like when I open up my Logitech app that has like videos saved in it, I've probably got 15 videos in there that like I didn't put out because I didn't like it, So So yeah, going forward into 2020 with this channel, like I definitely I hear it from not just you, Stan, but like from a lot of people that message me or email me about doing more videos. And I'm going to try to figure out a way to do that, and that works for me as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it'll work out. And I mean, even if you were to do a weekly thing, like, why not bring back the live stream? You know what I mean? Like, even if it's just an hour, half hour once a week, like you do a scheduled time, people know when to show up. And, I used to love those, man. Like,
well, I didn't mind. And I think they would go over a little better now because there's more people. And if I found a good time to do it, but it's like my time's going to be during the middle of the day. And like, we're all fucking working stiffs. Like, that's, it's not really gonna be that many people on there or whatever.
Yeah.
But also I mean, I don't know, and maybe that's you and I have to figure that out. The quality sucks on YouTube, like live streams. Like I don't know how you get that better. Because I've seen like certain crypto people and stuff that like their live streams like really good quality and shit. And like I
really
don't know.
Good upload speeds.
Is that just their internet? I don't know. But that was the thing, is I always look back, and even if I had a good point or had a good discussion going on, I was like, it's all fucking out of sync and looks like someone smeared Vaseline on the fucking camera, like it was just, it just like kind of sucked. And it was like, fuck it, whatever, where like we've kind of like, been building the, like there's certain episodes this year of this podcast that I thought sounded better quality than some of the, big name comedian podcasts that I listen to,
man.
And so like, I'm really proud of the quality of not only your editing, but like the microphones we have, and the technology of how we're able to do this when never having met in person, like
crazy.
I'm very impressed with the podcast episodes. And I also, on top of that, like, I'm an old school radio guy. Like, before I got into trees, I was a radio TV broadcasting major, and like I worked on a college radio station and two TV stations, like a public access station and all that. I listened to Howard Stern every goddamn day for 10 years probably. Like I uh I like broadcast. I like radio. Like, one of my heroes in life is a man named Rick Jenneret, and I urge people to look him up, and actually, like, I wouldn't mind if we put a little link to like a YouTube video. But he is the announcer for my team, my hockey team, the Sabres, and he has been their play-by-play announcer for 50 years, and
Oh, damn.
and I mean, he's just an old school radio guy he's just pure professionalism, a great distinguishable voice, just fantastic. And that's one of my heroes since I was younger than my son is. What's great is his career has been so long that I've I've been able to share like the love of Rick Jenneret with my son. Like, it's a generational thing. And we lay in bed and listen to like the radio broadcast of a game that I could turn on TV, but I like the radio broadcast. I like I listen to AM sports radio. I listen to podcasts, all this stuff. Like, I like that medium. So I'm happy with like just our podcast, and I think the quality's great, and I like this role. I like everything about what we're doing on the podcast level. I would be fine personally with just like not doing videos. Like, it's that part. Yeah. That part is frustrating to me. Like, this is just talking into a microphone, and it's fun, and we have great conversations. But that being said, I understand people do want to see videos. So, in the next year, I definitely want to, figure out a way that works for everyone.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it'll all work out in due time. Getting a camera is an investment, figuring out whatever issues that we have to figure out, that's all a time investment. But, having this as like a consistent medium, a consistent push every week, I think is awesome, So I don't think there's any like urgency to do any of these different ideas that we have. I just think, with anything else, you just go with the flow, and when it happens, it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all that being said about help find the others in this community going forward, like, Stan and I are definitely not going to drop the ball this winter and move forward and really grow, and kind of just go with the flow, into 2020. And I hope everyone is along for that ride and helps us in all the ways that you're already helping us. But I wanted to, with all that being said, I wanted to touch on an email that I got from, a listener. And a lot of the emails I get, if they're either someone that wants to come on the podcast or someone that's like, oh, it's awesome. I wish or not I wish, but like, can you guys touch on this? Like, I have a question or whatever, and it's all like praise. So I did get an email, and I think it's one of the only, if not first, constructive criticisms against, against us. And so it was from, a listener who was not saying, it wasn't too bad, but, this gentleman is part of the baby boomer generation, or I think the correct term is cohort, actually, because it has to deal with a range of your birthday, and that could be all in the same generation. So it's a demographic cohort of the baby boomers, and was basically saying that, I can't remember which episode. I think we were talking about baby boomers on the episode, talking about me going to Mexico. I think was that the.
Yeah, We didn't have a guest on that episode, right?
No, yeah, it was
just you and I.
Yeah, I think that one.
We were just talking about like slow legal change and just, I guess, the landscape of our society and culture just taking the slow back burner because of what we said we're baby boomers.
Right. So yeah, whatever episode that was, he had listened to and wrote and said, "Hey, you guys have too much baby boomer hate. We're not all just trust the government no matter what." And you know, I don't want to go overgeneralizing, but like I get it. He said we were painting with too broad of a brush, that we were stereotyping a whole generation. I don't want to get too much into his words, and obviously I responded very truthfully, and personally responded to his questions, but I wanted to kind of broadly address that topic to any other people that feel we've said stuff negative to baby boomers. I don't want to leave the impression with some of the things I say that I'm like, wearing a shirt that says "Okay, Boomer," right? like I think that meme's stupid, but I kind of get it. But it's also just a meme. Like, I don't think people need to be upset about it. But I do realize there's some things that I've said, even in the last episode. I believe there's things I've said that would make somebody that's looking for that anti-baby boomer sentiment in our generation. Well, my generation and your generation, I guess we're different cohorts or whatever. But someone that's looking for that negativity could hear some of the things we've said and say they're just hating on boomers, right? Yeah. And so I guess I wanted to address that in that when I've been talking about generational differences and especially the turnover in generations, you have to paint in a broad brush. I know I'm stereotyping. I know there's cool people in every generation, though, that are listening to our message and tuned into our community. And so if you're a baby boomer, if you're a millennial, if you're a Generation X, or if you're I forgot what they call teenagers. What's that cohort now?
Generation Z, I think.
Yeah. Or your Generation Z, like Will that we just talked to.
Yeah.
We're all on the same wavelength. We're the others. We're cool. I'm not talking about you. If I'm saying shit about baby boomers, I'm not talking about the person listening to this podcast. If you are of the baby boomer cohort and you're listening to this podcast, you're one of the cool ones. Don't worry about that. Like, you're obviously one of the cool ones, Yeah. I'm talking to, when I'm talking shit about baby boomers, especially when it comes to politics, I'm talking about the fucking, 70-year-old assholes that are sitting in McDonald's in the middle of nowhere, drinking coffee in the morning with their group of friends, like talking shit about Hillary Clinton or talking shit about, everybody, like they're just talking shit, and that is a big part of that generation. And so, to the cool boomers out there, I would say, look at it like it's a high school class. Not everyone in your goddamn high school class was cool. There was a bunch of you that were, and that's awesome. And you're probably still cool. But everybody's high school class, most of them sucked. And that hasn't changed in the generations and the cohorts, And so when you're talking about a generation of people, you're talking about millions of people over 20 to 30 years or whatever the breakdown is in these, classifications, cohorts or whatever. You have to generalize there, because the majority of that is doing something that takes 20 to 30 years to to come to fruition, right? And you have to pay. That's a broad brush thing. I obviously understand that on the individual level, everything's different. And I look at it like this. Everybody out there, raise your hand if you've ever prejudged someone in your neighborhood or a neighborhood you were in because of a political campaign yard sign that they had in their yard, even without knowing that person. Everyone's guilty of that, and you're generalizing that as part of their group. You're stereotyping their group. Now, they've put that flag out there to say, hey, I'm part of this group. But if you live next door to that person and you know that person and they're your neighbor, even if they have a sign of a politician on their yard that you don't agree with, if you know them on the individual level, you're like, they're cool. It's whatever,
Yeah.
But then when you're just driving by a house and like say they have a Republican sign and then they also have one of those like lawn jockey things, like all of a sudden you'll be like, well, that's a racist that lives there, without knowing that person at all, And so like that's the problem. Like generalizing on a personal level is bad. And I try not to do that. But we're kind of like brainwashed by the media to do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in the discussions we have, in the context we have of like generational turnover of like changing policy over half a century, like the grand scheme of the context that we talk about baby boomers and millennials and whatever, we're not talking about the individual level. We're zooming way out. We're looking at, it's a difference. Like what I've talked about, like, Bitcoin, like don't look at the weekly chart, zoom out, look at the yearly chart, and that's the same way with like people. Like you could zoom out and look at how like everybody's reacting and affecting each other here and there and these big clouds of influence and stuff like that. But if you zoom in on the people, you have to totally like look at that differently. And I hope that comes across to people that I do that. Like I'll have, like I said, Will, who is, a teenager on, and I could talk to him just as respectfully and just as deeply as a I don't know if we've had anyone from a baby boomer generation on, but like as a 50-year-old, like I come at the individual perspective with the utmost respect. I respect everybody as an individual as long as I see that, they respect me or other people at that same level. But if I'm throwing out, buzzword terms like baby boomer or millennial or whatever, I'm hoping people aren't getting offended by that, because and I do need to say that if you do find yourself getting offended by kind of the buzzword stuff we talk about when we're talking about that, I think you need to check yourself and see, are you getting frustrated or upset at that because our media has convinced you have to get frustrated and upset and angry when you hear that,
Or if the media has convinced you that you have to identify with that. I think that's another part of it is having your Generation Y, Generation Z, baby boomer be a part of your individualized identity.
Right. Or just the media has convinced us that there's some sort of generational conflict going on that actually isn't there. I mean, that's kind of just inherent in human nature, right? Like parents, like generations are going to conflict, life changes. Like that's my whole thing. When I talk about baby boomers, we're honestly, we're usually talking about, progressive versus conservative ideals, and ideologies. Mm-hmm. Well, that's always going to be the case. Like younger generations are always going to be like, you don't get it, to the older ones, and the older ones are going to be like, you don't get it, to the younger ones, and like that's always going to be the case until we're a complete artificial intelligence driven hive mind, like that's going to be the case. And like, unfortunately, social media, at least, maybe not mainstream media, but social media has led us to believe that there's some sort of fight going on that, like, it's kind of common sense that that fight exists, but it doesn't mean that you need to get outraged whenever you're triggered by a buzzword, you know? And so, I like I said, the person that emailed us, I responded to very sincerely, like, you're right. Sorry with stereotyping, but I also, you know, like I said, I painted my defense in that manner that, like, I'm sorry I used a broad term and stereotyped, but this is why. And so, you know, I just wanted to kind of expand on that and answer that email a little bit. And, you know, if there's anybody else out there that has heard us, I think even in the last episode, I kind of had some what could be considered baby boomer hate. But that's why. And it's not, I mean, I'm not, my generation is kind of in between Generation X and Millennial.
Yeah.
Like I think it's called the Xennial. So I'm in a weird spot, and I'm also fucking really immature. So like I'm probably squarely a millennial, but I'm old enough to have some more insight on the situation and be like, well, millennials are kind of silly too, you know, and whatever. So like, I guess I could rail on millennials a little more too, and to make it fair, but I'm not trying to rail on anyone. I'm trying to like make everyone just kind of realize there is, you know, there's being part of a cohort that like affects time and progression, and you can look back on that on human history and see how different cohorts affected human history at different times, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's still happening. And so like I'm trying to like kind of bring people, you know, be aware of that like even if you don't feel like you're part of it, you kind of are, you know, you're part of that equation.
Yeah. I think, I don't know. I think that whenever there's like classifications, like, you know, your generation or any demographic, ideally, I feel like it's just like there to kind of be divisive, though.
Oh yeah.
You know, and we talked about on the last episode with Tyson, which I did want to respond to last episode, but I figured I'd wait till now. How you posed the question of what came first, you know, the socialist ideals or the psychedelic, or vice versa, or does psychedelic instill those kind of ideas into it? And I think what it really does is it just rips down any of those divisive characterizations of an individual that's being used against them, and kind of just opens up the idea of that we're all human and that we all have to do this together. And I think that's kind of like, A, we all have to do it together. B, we're all the same at the end of the day, you know, no matter what divisive characterization is on your person, we all have to do this. We all have to do this at the same time, together, and we're all the same. We're all human, you know?
Yeah. I, you know, and I was thinking about it since having that talk, and you know, I think another thing it does, and I think we touch on it, that it like increases like your empathy and
certainly,
your, you know, your altruistic nature. I think it helps you see. Okay, say you achieve ego death, right? So if we achieve ego death, we are witnessing the universe as one. That we are coming to that. There is no I. We're all one. Well, what the fuck's more empathetic than that? You know, like that's like the most empathetic feeling our consciousness can experience in this reality. And so I've found myself, since using psychedelics respectfully and with intent, being able to take any shitty situation that happens to me and being able to stop and think of somebody I know personally or some story I know of someone that had it way worse, and being like, man, no matter how shitty it feels to me, there's someone out there that's got it worse.
Mm-hmm.
And it has helped me just kind of, have more empathy for people and be like, yeah, man, sometimes I have shitty days, and like, it looks like you're having a shitty day. Like I've given, 75% tips to waitresses just because it looked like they were having a fucking shitty day, and they fucked up my order, and they were probably high on pills, and they were a shitty waitress. But just my sheer empathy, being like, damn, my bill was $11, but just keep the 20, or whatever. Like, here you go. Like, I feel bad for you, or whatever. Like, and I attribute that to psychedelics.
Yeah.
That I'm able to step outside like my immediate concerns, my narcissistic fucking in my head stuff that everybody's prone to. Everybody's prone to just think about themselves, want to talk about themselves. I like that's part of the thing with like me not wanting to do videos, is like I feel like it's this like look at me thing, where I don't feel that with the podcast. But anyway, like, yeah, there's definite moments where I feel very empathetic to people having a bad time, a bad day, a bad week, a bad month, a bad year, whatever. And I've found myself just more easily identifying that and being either kinder or more charitable to those people in those situations where our lives are interacting,
Yeah. And one of the things that you left out with the empathy is empathy with yourself. And I think that's something I've definitely gained from,
like, not being as hard on yourself.
Yeah, not being as hard on yourself, allowing yourself to have bad days, allowing yourself to slack off, all these things that it could be that voice inside the voice inside of your head saying, you're not doing enough, or you should really be doing that. You need days off. You need the ability to reset, rest, recoup your energy and bring it back the next day. And I think that's very important. The thing that I guess is all simplified as empathy for me, but what it really is my ability to put myself in other people's shoes.
Yeah.
Like it's such a cliche term, saying, hey, just put yourself in their shoes, but you aren't really able to. I feel you certainly can. But for myself and my story, I wasn't really able to the point where I'm feeling what they're feeling and seeing just by their body language, how their day is going, like that is what opened up when I started growing and certainly using psychedelics, but also just simply going through bad times and good times and seeing myself, go through them, so that I was able to look, in the external world and see the mirror of me when I had that bad day right in front of me, characterized as another person. And I think that is another big point for me, was just going outside and treating human communication and human contact, no matter who it is, as a learning lesson and as a reflection of yourself. And, that's not me going on, the subway in Chicago and seeing like, a homeless person yelling at everybody and going crazy and being like, why is that? What does that say about me? It's not that. It's putting myself in other people's shoes. It's when my close relationships, a la my girlfriend or friends or brothers, they're in a bad mood, instead of really just diving into their thing and preaching what they should be doing, I look at what have I been doing and what am I doing wrong? Because normally when I'm in a good mood and a good spirit, the surrounding world is kind of in a good spirit as well. So like it's just like those lessons just like creep their way in without you even knowing until you're practicing them and you're like, whoa, and you make the connections yourself, which is wild.
Yeah.
And that's what I've really learned with the psychedelics on the positive side of things is like how much of our close surrounding little bubble, however many people or animals or whatever that may be, is impacted by our behaviors, our attitudes, our mentalities, and like our ideologies, which are all internal things.
Yeah.
And like that to
Yeah.
me was so mind blowing when I figured that one out.
Yeah. Yeah. And, to piggyback off of what you were saying about empathy for yourself, like,
Mm-hmm.
I forgot who asked me, someone emailed me and, or maybe it was a Facebook message. I don't know. But someone asked, like, what's the biggest lesson you've learned from psychedelics? And it took me a while to come up with that answer. But I think the best answer I was able to come up with was this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
That, I was thinking about that too. Like, when we were saying, let's do a reflectionary kind of looking back in the year type of podcast for the last one. Like, this has been a really bizarre year, 2019, for as crazy as I think 2020 was going to be. And we'll get into that. But like, 2019 has been fucking insane. In this year, have been possibly the lowest I've been of the entire last decade. Like, as far as mood and
yeah.
feeling about myself.
Oh, I remember.
But also towards the end here, I'm at some of the highest I've ever felt about myself, and some of my life's going about as good as it has in the past decade, and that's pretty crazy to have that kind of peak and valley in a year. And I won't say like there was times that I was suicidal, like that's like
Mm-hmm.
people like that's such a touchy thing that people are like, oh shit, or whatever. I wouldn't say like there's ever any moments this year where like I was that. And obviously with my kids and family, like I'm not going to do anything like that.
Yeah.
But I will say that I had moments this year of being nihilistic, which is almost as bad.
Yeah, if not worse.
Of being like,
Nothing matters.
there's no fucking point. And like there is no fucking point. Everything is chaos. Like every time you feel the universe is pushing you in one direction, it's just bullshit and chaos. And there's no reason to get pushed in any direction, whatever. Like I definitely had extended periods of time this year
Same.
of that being my main like state of mind. And like that really sucks. Like that's not, I mean, it's depression. Obviously, it's a side effect of depression. I would say nihilism is yeah. I mean, it's terrible. And to go from that to like this total, and even without, I mean, what I to start this as saying it was a psychedelic lesson or whatever, that this too shall pass. Like I really haven't had that much psychedelic experiences this year. Like I don't know, 4 or 5. I can't remember.
Mm-hmm. And nothing crazy either. It wasn't anything crazy.
But nothing crazy, but not very frequent either.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like most of my outlook on life this year has been influenced by psychedelics, at least on a massive level. But at every moment of low at every low this year was an overwhelming like message of like, this too shall pass,
Yeah.
just patience and acceptance, and this too shall pass, and I got through all of that. And then on top of that, not accepting failure and using it to improve myself and figuring out what I need, like learning from lessons and not running from shit. Like, taking those challenges head on helped me come through the other end on the complete other side of the spectrum, like where I'm closing out the year on a complete fucking high when I entered it on a complete low. And, that's my reflection on 2019 is like whatever the fuck I just did this year, I have to keep doing. And more importantly, and this is why, I was saying, I really love what we're doing with the podcast and our goal. And I don't really want to change up. Like, I just want to keep continuing what our mission has been and staying true to that, is that like, I don't just want that for myself, what I just experienced this year. I don't just want that for myself. I want that for everyone else that I can influence. And so, yeah, like I want to keep improving, keep growing, and keep influencing everyone else that is listening to us and tuned in to improve and grow as well.
Yeah, I think that it's odd because I feel kind of somehow like the energies almost sync up that with like the Discord server, like everybody's, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like there's very extreme parallels to how everybody's feeling at the current moment of time when I'm talking to people. Like I totally had that same roller coaster ride this year as well. Maybe even more frequent than once, but yeah, no, I never, like, I didn't really have a conclusion on what 2019 was. Like my concept of and perception of time is kind of fucked. So like, I don't know. I have a hard time of like recalling things that happened and all that. Like there was things in my external world that definitely changed, like moving to the city and building my business more and all that. But to me, that's not really what matters. It really is just like overcoming those shitty times and like those moments where it was all about just like making it to the next 24 hours, Like, I don't know if you've ever felt that. I don't know. But when it was just like, it really is the feeling of nothing matters and there's no point to anything. And I feel like that's what a lot of people are dealing with, or at least a lot of people that I've talked to are dealing with, and they're along the same lines of that. I don't know why, but I think when you get into like the murky waters of quote unquote enlightenment, there's like that thin rope that you have to there's the tightrope that you have to walk between everything not mattering and everything mattering to an extreme, and
Yeah.
and when you're on the left side or whatever side it is where things don't matter, you can barely even see the other side. But if you keep going, that's definitely something I learned this year. If you keep going and take action, because I spent the commonality between my days where I felt horrible was inaction and doing nothing and practicing self-destruction, whether it be poor diet, video games, nothing that you would deem growth,
Yeah.
And the commonality between the now currently where I'm feeling good day to day and some days even great and other days feeling like, the relationship with my girlfriend is tremendous, is all routine action. And, a lot of it is just a to-do list, even as simple as you want to make it, and just doing it, it's just not letting your distracted mind slip in and say, "Oh, I'll wait. I can do that tomorrow," or I have until Sunday to do it. I'll do it on Friday.
Yeah.
So I think that's the biggest lesson that I've learned, and you just sparked it. You just hit the nail on the head right there. Is riding that wave and having faith when it's on the lower of the two sides.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I can't, as our society becomes more intense, social media has made our society way more intense than it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
Think about all these like celebrities that kill themselves, or I mean, there's obviously all the fentanyl overdoses and stuff like that, but I think that's all that. The suicides are what interests me. Is like, why would Anthony Bourdain kill himself? Why would fucking Chris Cornell kill himself? Why would all these people, right?
Yeah.
And it's like our society is so judgmental and intense, and the more in the public eye you are, the more intense that is, and so like, it's harder in those moments where everyone's human. Everyone is going to have nihilistic moments. Well, it's bad enough when Joe Schmo, you and I have these nihilistic moments of, yeah, it's all bullshit. I suck. I'm stupid. Whatever negative shit we tell ourselves. Well, when you're famous and you're having those moments, but on top of that, 500,000 people on Twitter are telling you the same thing, like it's overwhelming. But it goes back to like, fuck, what if Chris Cornell just slept it off, man? What if he just said, this too shall pass, and went to bed?
Mm-hmm.
And woke up the next morning and said, fuck that, I'm not feeling like that ever again. What if, I don't know, you might not know him, but Neil Casal, he's a guitar player. He was in a lot of bands. Like, do you know the Black Crowes, right? Do you know them?
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris Robinson, the singer from them,
mm-hmm.
He has a band called Chris Robinson Brotherhood. Neil Casal was a guitar player. He played with Ryan Adams. He had his own band called Circles Around the Sun. Like, I mean, this dude was like, he never really was like you had to be a music nerd to know who Neil Casal was, but he was the musician's musician, like he played with everyone. He was a studio, session guy, and fantastic fucking jam band psychedelic guitar player of the last 20, 30 years or whatever. He's been in like everybody's touring band, like that kind of guy.
Yeah.
But also never had his own thing. Like, he did have some solo albums, but no one ever heard him, and whatever. So like, anyway, it turns out he passed away, and like, they didn't really say what happened, but it came out like last week that he killed himself. And it really had me like thinking like, damn, like, this is a dude, like, all he did was tour and record with hippie jam bands. How the fuck are you gonna like want to kill yourself? Like, that's a dream,
Yeah.
But it made me think like, man, he's human. He's just like everybody else. He's just like, he's no different than everybody we've had on this podcast. He's no different than you and I. Like, he's just a dude. But he's gonna have the same ups and downs. He's gonna have the same nihilistic moments. But he can look and look at the comments on shit on Instagram or whatever, and just one asshole saying Neil Casal's too shitty to ever be a solo artist, or like whatever. I don't know if that was actually a comment, but I'm sure it was. Knowing the internet, I'm sure there's some fucking bullshit comment from some fucking troll that maybe that's what set him off. And I can't help to think like, what if he just fucking slept that off? What if he turned the fucking social media off or whatever? I'm making an assumption here that's, what threw him over the edge,
Yeah,
but still, it's the same idea. I'm just using him as an example of like, what if they listened to this too shall pass, whatever they were feeling, whatever they were going through, maybe they could have slept it off, and, that's what I'm looking back at 2019 has been a big lesson in my life of like, I know I'll be down again, like that'd be, short-sighted for me to, and idealistic for me to be like, it's all up from here, boys, like that's not the case. But, yeah, like whenever you're at that point, whenever it feels like it's bullshit, whenever it feels like nothing matters, just try sleeping it off one night at least, before you seek help and shit like that. Just this too shall pass, and I know that's a common, isn't that used as for like Alcoholics Anonymous?
I'm not sure. I know it's a common phrase, but I'm not sure what's used for.
I don't know if it's that or like Buddhism or whatever, but it is such an important mentality to have whenever you're in those inevitable valleys of life,
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. How's your, I guess let's go deeper than 2019. How is the last five years? How was the last decade in your life?
Yeah. I like looking at the larger scale. I'm a zoom out kind of guy.
Cool. Yeah.
And like I could look back at the last year. Like I said, 2019 was a little different for me though, but most times I can look back and be like, that was just a year or whatever. Next year's just a year.
Yeah.
But when I think decade, that does make me stop and be like, oh, wait a minute, and so like I look back, 10 years ago, I had just become a dad.
Oh shit.
Like that, like the last 10 years have been a major turning point in my life,
Dad years.
I was just starting like my career in like tree work and conservation and stuff like that, so and then to where now, like, I'm closing out this decade in a fucking dream job. Like, it can make more money, but other than that, like I'm in love with every component of my new job. And that career path is now 10 years old, roughly. But yeah, looking back at the last decade is like, I've been through, and not even, like I said, like this year was some of the lowest I've ever been. Like, I've talked about it in videos and stuff, but the situation around my oldest son being born was, as traumatic as it gets. And I've come through that. And like, I'm still here, it all passed.
Mm-hmm.
I made it through everything, and like, it's important when you're switching decades to look back and be like, remember all those bad times. Mm-hmm. Remember all the struggle, because if it's been 10 years since you had a struggle, well, guess what? You fucking triumphed that struggle. And you need to look back to be like, what did I do? Because I need to do that. I'm going to have struggles in the future as well. And I need to remember how I triumphed them, how I won the last time, And so I think like the biggest lesson I've learned from that, if I'm looking back like a whole 10 years, right? Like,
yeah.
If someone was saying, hey, your wife's pregnant and she is going to end up in a coma and may not make it, and you're like going to be staring at new single dad widow at the same time. Like, if someone told you that when your wife is pregnant, you would freak the fuck out. Like,
oh yeah,
like the not knowing what's going to happen, you would be like, holy fucking shit, what am I going to do? And you would freak out. Right. But that just happening to you unexpectedly, surprisingly, and obviously I'm grateful for all the support and help I had of family and friends and stuff like that helped get me through it. But it was also like when those things happen in life, there's like an instinct that just kicks in and you make it through. The much more damaging part of situations like that in life is the fear of not knowing how you would handle that if that happened. Mm-hmm. But when it actually does happen, surprisingly, we all have an amazing amount of strength to get through whatever complications are happening in our life.
Yeah.
And that's hard to see.
Yeah, you wouldn't think you do.
Unless you're in the middle of it, it's hard to see.
Yeah.
You know, our fear scares us and paralyzes us from like even getting near situations that, you know, seem impossible. But when we are actually embrace or you know, when we actually encounter those situations, we have a surprising amount of strength from inside ourselves, and we find a surprising amount of support from those outside ourselves. And that's what makes community so important. That's why, like you were saying, our Discord, you know, seems to really foster, you know, this growth in us. It's a support group more than anything else.
Yeah.
You know, we're not just on there talking about drugs, you know, like that probably makes up what? We have fucking 20% of the conversations on our Discord server.
Maybe even less than, honestly.
Maybe. Yeah, right. You know, I mean, it's all about a support group and people to talk to. And, yeah, that, you know, that's something I've really learned in the last 10 years is that, there's more support out there than it may feel sometimes, you know, even within, for sure. Yeah. You're stronger than you think you are. I don't give a fuck what anyone listening to this is going through. You're stronger than you think you are. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man. I tried to look back at my decade, man. I was graduating high school in 2010.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I know, right? So I don't know. It's like those years, I would say the first 5 years of this decade where I went to college and then graduated was like stepping on the gas when it's fresh rain, you know, and you're like skidding and you're going crazy. The back tires are going crazy. You're trying to gain a handle in your car. And then as soon as that 5th year ended, that's when it like went, you know, like those college years are so, it could just be my story, but I feel like you probably had similar time in college where it's just like chaotic. And
well, my college years were spread out over a decade, so that's a little different.
Oh, okay. Okay. So I rode the up and down roller coaster in college like crazy. So I guess we could go back to high school. All my high school, I guess I was in the in crowd or whatever you want to say. I looked at it as I just wanted to be friends with everyone. But I ran a music blog that was pretty successful, and that like took me into college, and you know, was basically a huge part of my identity because it was so well known that I could connect with people I had no idea who they were, you know, and name drop it, and then they would be friends with me. So while I was in college, freshman, sophomore year, joined a fraternity, did that whole thing. It was a good time. Met some great lifelong friends for sure. Eventually became the president of my fraternity, which was totally unexpected. That was first semester junior year. And at the end of that first semester, we got kicked off campus for throwing parties, and very poor judgment and very poor decisions on my hands. I don't think anybody at that age should be allowed to have jurisdiction over a fraternity or something that's that serious in the eyes of a university. I guess we could just leave it at that. Very poor decisions were made. We got kicked off campus, and just shit hit the fan, man. Like shit hit the fan. I left university for a semester, came back after the summer. And so that was such a downhill after like becoming the president. I was riding such a high, getting along with everybody I came encountering with, such a high, and then just dropped off, lost trust with everybody. Most importantly, lost trust with myself. You know, rekindled some relationships from high school since I was back in my hometown that ended up being best friends. And still within this time span of the decade, I became best friends with somebody and ended my friendship with somebody in that time span. So it was just like a constant up and down with relationships and friendships. And I don't know. It was just, it's just up and down roller coaster ride. And I don't know, when I was looking back in like my notes and my journals and whatnot, I guess like the only thing I kept coming back to was like music. And when I had met my girlfriend, my girlfriend at the time. And I mean, those two things are like the two constants in my life that are like still holding me to this day. You know what I mean? And then you just throw added ingredients onto that recipe, like this community, this podcast. And it's just, I learned so many lessons with those ups and downs though. Like I probably painted a pretty sad picture, but the lessons I learned from that helped me go into this next decade being able to pick and choose what I add to my daily recipe to have the odds in my favor and not choose the things that can cause that steep decline, you know? And so I'm honestly grateful that I went through it at those young years. But it's crazy that it was only 10 years ago that all of this kind of just started cracking off. Like when I like thought about it, I was like, at first I was like, oh, I was 17. And then I was like, wait, I just graduated high school? What the fuck? So, so yeah, I don't know. But I really do think the lesson I learned of the decade were all those big lessons that I learned within the year span or the 10-year span, and utilizing those to go forward. And I guess just like avoid any thing that doesn't feel right. I think that's kind of what it is like, I didn't, back when I was making worse decisions for my health and worse decisions for, I guess, just human outcome. I kind of was just like going with popular opinion on things and not going with my gut. And I think alongside psychedelics and definite like 5-gram trips where I lost my shit, stuff like that, like all that adds up to kind of forces you to trust your instincts, you know? Like, I don't know what it is, but for me, at least, it forced me to kind of get in touch with myself and understand that I have all the tools within to do whatever I choose to do. I just have to listen to those tools and listen to the feelings that I have.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You know, me personally having a 10-year head start on you would say that the next 10 years that you're heading into will be, and you're already heading into them with the right mindset. It's all about, going with your gut. And, you know, unfortunately our 20s can be two things. They're very idealistic, but you're also very driven by your social groups, you know? And for me personally, from the time I graduated high school till the time I was your age, I probably had 8 distinctly different groups of friends that were my main social group. Okay. You know? So like every time that social group changed,
you changed
goals and views and opinions and everything changed, you know? Yeah. And so it wasn't until my late 20s being a dad definitely changed my views and stuff like that,
Definitely.
and values. But I started to form a distinctly my own opinion on life, to where now, and definitely, the journaling component of this podcast and YouTube videos and stuff has helped me shape that as well, and to kind of view it under another microscope. But still, I see that in this last 10 years of my life, I've been much more, I don't know if independent's the right word, but I've been much more of an individual.
Yeah.
And formed a solid view that is made up of all the views that I've had previous.
Yeah.
But it's less influenced by anyone else, I would say. I hope that comes across. I may be wrong. I don't know. But, looking at myself in the last 10 years, as opposed to the 10 years prior to that, like I said, I'm much more independent in my, the way I look at life.
Mm-hmm. You worded that perfectly with,
right.
Different,
and
your previously held opinions forming, you're taking the best out of those, the worst out of those to avoid, and it makes up your current view.
Yeah. And I think you're at the turning point of that. If I can project onto your life, I would say that's where you're at, is that you're at that turning point, with a hell of a sturdy ground to start off on.
Thanks, man.
And more sturdy than I was at that turning point. But I would say that's what the next 10 years are going to hold for you, is that you're going to really feel confident in the independence of your view on things,
Mm-hmm.
And like, as far as social groups go, that's just the way it goes, man. It's from like 21 to 27, I was at a bar every night playing music or watching a band, or at a house party after a band played or whatever. And it was just like, where's everyone hanging out tonight? Yeah. What are we doing? And then you hit this wall where everyone starts getting married and having kids, and all that goes away. And it's weird, and I was one of the ones that got married and had kids. I look at some of my friends that didn't do that component of the natural progression of life. And I'm not saying that everyone has to have kids for sure. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, you gotta have kids, man. You gotta get married. I'm not like that, but you do have to understand if that's the life that someone's taking. I'm not saying that you're one of those people, but to anyone that's like your age and that transition of your life, and is like, I'm not going to have kids anytime soon, or I never want to have kids, you do have to understand that your social group is going to change, because most people are going to go that route. And that changes if most of your view comes from your social group. Once you are transitioning into, your third decade on this planet, your social group is going to change significantly.
Mm-hmm.
And from your third to fourth decade on this planet, for anyone, that's a huge transition of social groups. And I've seen people that didn't take the marriage kid route. They just get kind of lost, and it's much more turbulent, and so like, it's weird. Like, I don't know if that's like a peer pressure into getting married, or what that is about society that starts that is a pitfall that I guess I would urge you or anyone that's your age to be aware of.
Yeah.
that like I'm not saying you're like out partying all the time.
No, yeah.
Like I was, but it's like, I don't know, the party just ended, and it can leave if you're not prepared for that. It can like leave you like, what the fuck's the point? I'm just supposed to fucking just work and like that's it, like like it can leave you like you'd be like, what the fuck, and I mean that's another reason that like the community we've built is so important, because it's an outlet for like that, when you start having those questions and everything, like it's an outlet for people to offer their insight.
Well, yeah, and I was just about to say, going off that, I consider everybody in there that I talk to friends, so my social group has already shifted. The whole party's over mindset, I went through that. I would say probably, 5 years ago. I dealt with the feeling though that you're explaining, probably more recently in the past 3 years, of just like, wait, what? Like, what's happening? What we're stuck working 9 to 5 for 40 plus years until we retire. I dealt with that, and I am at the end point of that, certainly. But yeah, I mean, my friend group went from a shit ton of people when I started the university, to a small group of people, to one person. That one person left, and then I just started focusing on what was real, and it was my girlfriend, my family. And that's like really all I needed. And then I was okay with that just being it. And I think once you're okay with whatever you have is what you need, the other things start popping up, like the others, like this, like the community popping up, and I genuinely consider everybody in there that talks to me friends and reaches out to me friends, so that expands. Friends that it's odd, friends that you haven't talked to but were very close with back in the day, hit you up and you have like a 2-hour phone call with them. And it's just, I can't help but think that is a product of me coming to the solution or resolution of, I have everything I want, or I have everything I need right here, and they're not going anywhere, meaning my family, my girlfriend, and the extremely close people that I have around me,
Yeah.
But yeah, that shift, I totally, you hit the nail on the head with the explanation. It's like, if you aren't ready for the party to stop, it's going to stop at some point. And if you're the last one off the party bus, it's odd. It's a weird vibe to go through, for sure.
Yeah. And it when I think of that, and that's part of the whole generational turnover that, is inevitable in every demographic cohort, and like, I don't know. Everyone's gone through that, obviously, with the advancements in technology and society. Like it's looked a little different every time that's happened. But every 10 years for every, age group follows that same pattern, I'm sorry, it does, and it always makes me think back to my buddy that died, that, was on heroin. We used to party like fucking crazy. And everyone stopped partying except him. And obviously he had addiction that played a role in that. But yeah, like on a psychological level, that had to be the kind of thing he was dealing with. Is like, why is no one else fucking partying?
Yeah.
And so it just changed the people that were at the party for him, and the people at that point, it's not a fun party anymore, And so you run that risk too, especially in the drug culture like we are, when I was partying with him, we weren't doing heroin,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's like at some point the party favors change. when the party changes, and yeah, I mean, he was, I can't remember what his age was, but I mean, yeah, he was, early mid 30s. He was going through that same fucking thing psychologically. His social group completely fucking changed over the course of 10 years. And partly due to addiction, but partly due to not handling the psychology of the situation correctly. He just fell victim to the worst case scenario that can happen with that.
Mm-hmm. I have buddies that I guess I shouldn't say when I was talking about my friend group shrinking to one and whatnot. I guess I meant my extremely close friends. I do have friends that, we text. We don't really catch up. It's not like we're seeing each other once a month or anything like that, but we do spend time with each other probably 4 times a year. And I do have that group, that is a social group. And there are some in that group that are right on, right where your buddy was, not with the drug use, but with drinking. And it's almost as if like they take it to a different level when it's just them too. I don't know if that's how it is with your buddy, but with drinking for sure. I had one friend of mine who is definitely started to come out of it. If not already out of it, he's got like a stable relationship, and that's definitely helping him out. But just drinking and going 4 nights a week to the bar, even if it's Monday through Thursday, he's there. And it's just him going by himself, and he'll be there from 3:00 till 10.
Yeah.
And it never was that way in college. And it's just like, he's taking it to a different level at that point. It's like denial almost.
Well, and habit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, that's, I'm not a big, like New Year's resolution kind of person, but it's like, I think it is important to like recognize habits that aren't good.
Mm-hmm.
And as you go into a new year, into a new decade, to try to curb those habits, that are detrimental to you.
Yeah.
That don't help your growth, and definitely the ones that inhibit your growth.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know I've seen a lot of people like that like everyone went to the bar. That's what you did. Well, everyone stopped going to the bar because like their job was more demanding, or they had a kid, or they got married and their wife didn't like them going to the bar, or they're trying to save up to buy a house or whatever. And it's expensive to go to a bar. So they have cookouts, but like, you don't really want to go to that because like you like getting drunk, and you can't really get shit-faced drunk at a cookout like you can at a bar. So you go to the bar instead, and then like that just becomes a habit. As you said, you go Monday through Thursday. That's your habit.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's like a missed opportunity that person had to curb that habit. And I've seen that quite a lot. And yeah, people come out of it, but there's like a period where like everyone's married, if they don't have kids or not, everyone's married, and at cookouts they're like, yeah, so-and-so is just, they're at the bar, they're at the tavern, mm-hmm. they're doing that, whatever. Like they're dating some fucking crazy drunk woo girl, and no one likes them, so they don't invite them to cookouts, so they go out to bars and whatever. And I've seen that happen with so many different people.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people come out of it though, but it's that weird transitionary point, from your second second decade on Earth to your third. That's the weird transition, and it's a weird transition you see among your social group,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, I don't think that's I don't think that's just our generation has experienced that, or my generation, or your generation. I think that is every generation has experienced that. Like, I'm sure, if you could talk to your grandparents about the transition from the 30s to the 40s, like they would probably, well, I mean, I guess there was the whole, Great Depression going on and stuff like that. But still, I mean, it's like everyone kind of on the individual level experience that,
Yeah. Do you think that people deal with, existential questions more in that decade too? Because I know I did. I don't know if you had at all. Like
Well,
just
yeah,
finding purpose and
it,
just seeking, I guess,
yeah.
purpose.
Well, and you got to think about it like, you know, that buzz term of midlife crisis, you know, we equate that to a 50-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, the at least for males, like the estimated life expectancy is like mid 70s. So like your midlife crisis is actually in your 30s, you know. Um and so that's it. You know, what is a midlife crisis other than an existential crisis?
Yeah.
um you know, that like, fuck, I'm half done, what am I doing with the next half, you know, like that kind of thing. And you start feeling that towards the end of your 20s, you know, like you start feeling like,
What am I
what the fuck
doing?
am I doing, what am I doing, what am I doing here, you know? And I think that all comes back to the this too shall pass, is like nobody knows what the fuck they're doing here. It doesn't matter how much they charge
You got to
to
remember
tell people.
that.
Nobody knows what they're doing here, you know. And yeah, the goal is to die knowing what you did here, but I think everyone's surprised by death, everyone's surprised by age, everyone's surprised by everything, you know, like uh you know, that's been another big lesson I've had this year specifically, is like there's no benefit to permanence in your ideology, you know, like there's no benefit to that. Like you have to be accepting of what's presented to you when it's presented to you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah, that all plays into this too shall pass, is like, you know, like as long as you're doing something, as long as you're growing, as long as you're going forward, you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
It's like we were talking about in the last episode. It's those moments of limbo. It's those moments of not knowing what the fuck we're doing that are the most damaging.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's looking back on my decades and projecting them onto to you or anyone else that's you know, even younger than you.
Yeah. I
Like that.
appreciate
That's
it.
just what I would. That's just what I would say, is that like just always be going forward, because that's the goal, or that's the message of life, is like it just keeps fucking going.
Mm-hmm.
And like we have to too. You just got to keep going, you know? Don't fucking stop. You can go down the wrong road. There's nothing wrong with that. Lots of people have went down the wrong road. You know, it's the people that stopped that just became part of the fucking the wave, the herd, you know, like it's just keep going.
Yeah. Damn. That's spot on.
But, you know, that being said, looking forward to the next decade, like that's my goal. Just always be growing. I you know, whether it's growing and building this community or other communities, whatever I'm going to be building. You know, that was one thing that medium that I went to told me, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, this year you're going to really start building it. You know, you're going to be the architect, you know, or whatever. Like that's the thing. Like I don't even think that's I'm not taking that very grandiose as I'm going to build some business or something.
Yeah.
I'm going to be really building myself. You know, and like I see so many people my age. You hit 35 and you're like, well, this is what I do. You know, like this is what I do. I do the same thing all the time. You know, and like I don't want to be that. I want to always be growing and improving and figuring shit out. And I think that's how you stay alive. You know, a big lesson I've learned over the last decade watching my father. My father retired. Well, before the last decade he retired, but still, like, you know, the bulk of his retirement has been the last decade, and he quit working and sat down on the couch, you know, and like he's just deteriorated since. And I'm trying to take that lesson earlier in life
Yeah.
like what's weird. I'm younger now than my dad was when I was born. So like, it's hard for me to like judge myself to that generation in my family because I'm not that old yet compared to when, like
Mm-hmm.
when my life began, my dad was older than I am now. And that's kind of weird, but I'm trying to take that as like, to look at my dad's life and how he grew from that point, from when I was born to then. He didn't grow that much. He's not that different a person. And I hope I can look back when my kids are my age and be like, man, I changed a lot over the course of their life, And so, yeah, going forward the next decade and decade after that, like I just always want to be growing. And the altruistic, empathetic part of my psyche, I want to influence other people to grow, whether that's with this podcast, whether that's, following through with my dream of being a social worker or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
Or psychedelic therapist or whatever. That just, I want that to be a part of the next 10 years, is that I influence as many people as I can influence, to keep moving forward with me,
Yeah. I've always found it weird when you don't see somebody for a long time, or I guess it should be the other way around. When somebody hasn't seen you for a long time, or somebody hasn't seen somebody for a long time, and they say, "Whoa, they've changed a lot." It's like, isn't that what we're supposed to be doing here?
Yeah.
Like I went to go see my aunt last year, maybe it was 2 years ago, and I hadn't seen her in a while. I visited her when I was in Florida once, and she talks to my mom the next day. Oh, he's changed a ton. Well, yeah, like that's what we're doing, right?
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's how you stay young,
Yeah.
like, I mean, the more you buy into age, the more you age.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were talking about this the other night, but it's like, life is weird where like on my time scale, I don't feel like stuff's moving very fast. I don't
Yeah, yeah.
feel, like I'm getting very old. I don't feel that. When I look at like my nieces and nephews and like how old they are now and what, they're graduating high school. Like my oldest niece is a senior in high school and, has a job and a car and
Mm-hmm.
is talking about, okay, that makes me feel old. Comparing myself to other people's timelines makes me feel old. But on my individual timeline, it's crawling.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I take those moments. I take that time to be introspective and really take account of where my life is going. And yeah, in the next 10 years, I have to keep that up, because the next 10 years I'm definitely gonna be old. But if I can still maintain this feeling that I'm not that old, then I won't age as fast, and so that's the thing. Like if you know, growing is a side effect of being young, and so the longer you can grow, the
Yeah.
longer you stay young.
Yep. Yeah. And when you're young, you think growing's only a physical thing,
Yeah,
and then when you get older, you realize that although the physical part might be done, there's a shit ton more to do.
yeah, yeah. And yeah. So all that being said, that's the positive individual perspective of going forward into the next year and the next decade
Hell yeah.
of how I feel. I do want to touch on. I know we're going late. This is
Oh,
definitely
dude,
going to be
I'm cool with going as late as you want. I've been looking forward
yeah,
to this episode for a while.
yeah. This is going to be a long podcast for everyone that's still hanging in there, but um, there is a part of me, and it's the part that pays attention to current events and global goings on, that we talked about it in the last episode. But the next 10 years from a certain perspective is not going to be positive. And that's another thing, is that I hope to it, in my role of influencing other people to grow, I hope to influence them to be aware of like what's happening behind the scenes, but also not to be afraid of that, and to embrace that, and to see how in that environment that is going to be very negative, especially economically, that, at some point in the next 10 years, we are going to have a major recession, if not a depression. And while that may not be on people's minds now, it is something that you need to be aware of and as prepared as you can be. And, I'm hoping that I can fill that role of like town crier as much as a inspirational guru, I guess.
Yeah.
But I know when we talk about crypto, it either inspires people or makes them roll their eyes. The next 10 years is going to see crypto be more and more the thing that people are like, I should not have rolled my eyes at that. And one reason I feel that way is, it's only 10 years old now. If we're looking at stuff on a decade time scale, the whole idea of cryptocurrency is only 10 fucking years old. And it's such a massive thing that I think it's really naive to be like, that's all it's got in it is 10 years. And the next 10 years is it going to be going down? That's not the case. It could be a bumpy ride, but the next 10 years, it's only going to continue to grow at the same way the people are going to grow. The currency of the people, which is what I like to think of cryptocurrency as, is going to grow with those people. And I also think that in the next 10 years, like I said, we're going to go into a recession. We're going to go into a depression. It's really going to shake the foundation of what we consider money and value and the economy. That's going to be on really shaky ground. And I may be wrong, but I think I've done enough research to know that crypto is going to benefit from that. If you want to look at cryptocurrency from a dollar perspective, the dollar is not going to look as good as it does right now over the course of the next 10 years. And so, like, I'm going to continue, and we will continue on this podcast and on the Discord to talk about crypto. And, there's no other reason for me to do that other than to be, like I said, the town crier. To be like, check this out. If you're starting to worry about your fucking 401k or your retirement plan, check this alternative out. Check it out. Look at it. I'm always going to be that dude that they're like, yeah, he was fucking talking about it, 5 years ago before it was $30,000 or whatever, whatever people are going to equate it to. I'm hoping in the next 10 years that I'll be looked at from a certain amount of people as like, well, that guy's had the foresight to at least, try to tell people what, what they should be paying attention to.
Mm-hmm. Not only with the impact of the dollar on it, but I think even if you don't have the same vision that you do with it, where there's a recession and the value of the dollar is questioned, the undoubtable, I guess, occurrence that is going on as we speak is just the globalization of commerce. And that alone, to me, is a reason to look into it.
Well, and so I may be wrong on my bet that cryptocurrency is going to be the benefit. Well, I don't want to say beneficiary, but that it's going to be the thing that saves the middle class. It may not be crypto. It may be something else. It may be some financial tactic instituted by governments and central banks to save the middle class. They may do something else. I don't think they will. I don't think they can. And I think it will be crypto, but there's a very real situation that is shaping up that I'll go into it a little bit, but I do recommend people Google the term liquidity trap. So I'll try to explain that, but there's two economies in the world and on the government level. And right now, the major currency, the reserve currency in the world that all currencies are valued against is the dollar. Well, if you look at our economy in our country, our financial economy is great. Stock market, all-time highs, GDP, all these things that they use to
measure success.
To measure success of a government and an economy are great. But the thing is that there's a real economy, and that involves wages, that involves gas prices, that involves the buying power of our dollar. And the liquidity trap is there's a wall between the normal the real economy and the financial economy, and that wall is getting thicker. And what's happening, okay, is that the Federal Reserve, the central bank of our country, to keep the stock market at all-time highs, is printing dollars and buying assets from banks and financial institutions in the form of bonds or certain stocks or whatever, but they're buying assets to raise the price of that asset. But if it's an asset, they're also lowering the interest rates. If anyone's ever heard, like the Fed lowered the interest rate. So what that is that the return on bonds and stocks and the dividends from stocks and the interest rate on bonds, they lower that, but then they raise the price by buying it with money that they printed. This makes it so that holding that asset makes less sense. And so they sell those assets and buy more, and it's this loop. But all of that is taking place in the financial economy on the left side or whatever, on the one side of the wall. On the other side of the wall, wages are not going up. Production is not going up. And any profit or success of businesses, because they want to inject, the Fed on surface level is trying to inject money into the economy to increase spending on the consumer level, which they do. But what do most people buy? If you're going to buy a new car, if you're going to buy a new guitar, if you're going to buy a new Xbox, most people are buying that with credit. They're not buying that with money they actually have. Most people are living paycheck to paycheck. Most people are not seeing a raise. The average raise over the last couple of years is 8 cents a year. So there's this, and when you're talking someone that is working, makes a good, makes an average salary, that's the middle class, right? They are up against the wall. Any spending they're doing is all credit. It's not actual money. But the people they work for, the business owners, they're doing well. But they have a weird situation going on. I don't know what it's like in Chicago. I don't know what it's like in any other place that other people are living that listen to this podcast. But I know around here, Every fucking place is hiring. We have a labor shortage. So if companies are getting the same production out of lower amounts of employment, what's happening is instead of investing in their company and increasing their production of whatever their industry is, the safer investment right now looks like investing that in the stock market and buying bonds and buying stocks and stuff like that. So that's what companies are investing in, is just putting their money in something that's going to make more money, not investing that in growing their company, not investing that in giving their workers more incentive to be more productive. Not they can't hire more people because nobody wants to work, nobody can pass a drug test, whatever the reason may be for the labor shortage. The profit from companies is going back into the financial economy. It's leaving the normal economy, and it's going into that loop that's just feeding on itself and is based off of money that's just being printed out of thin air from the federal banks. The federal bank, like every week, and they do this overnight because of a thing called repos, where they buy bonds late at night after the market's closed, with an agreement that they will sell them back at a higher price later and stuff like that. That's a whole nother rabbit hole, but it's all fake money. And the federal government, or the Federal Reserve, is buying federal government bonds in the billions every week. That's how much fake money they are printing out of nowhere and just putting into that loop. And then releasing these reports where they're like, oh, hey, the S&P is at a record high. You'd be stupid not to have a 401k, an IRA, and all this stuff. You need to be invested in this because it's a record high. But it's all based on bullshit money. So that's the situation that's going on. I don't see that getting better in the next 10 years. And I also, technical aspects aside, I don't see cryptocurrency going away in the next 10 years, which is why I feel safe making that bet on, like, well, this is an economic system that is totally an alternative and a different way of looking at this. This economy, cryptocurrency, especially Bitcoin that is mined, is based on production. It's based on energy and the price of energy and energy consumption. It's based on something. So I hate when people are like, oh, it's nothing. It's just code. It's not based in anything. Well, our dollar from that situation that I just explained is not based on anything either. So I really feel that in the next 10 years, we're going to see that people are going to realize that. And Bitcoin, when everyone's like, it's too expensive now. First off, like we've always said, you don't have to buy a whole Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. None of us are buying whole Bitcoins, And we're going to see, we ain't seen nothing yet. Like I was saying in the last episode, we have not seen anything yet. I know it sounds ridiculous that a Bitcoin could be worth $1 million, and maybe that's really overshooting its potential. But if you look at the stupid money involved, if we have an institution that can create billions of dollars a week to artificially inflate the price of something that really isn't anything. It's a stock in a government that is creating its own money to create the value of that stock. How is Bitcoin any more fake than that? If anything, it's the same level of fake, but I'd be willing to argue that it's less fake than that economic system. And I think over the next 10 years, we will see that that situation play out. And I do feel that I'm on the right side of that argument, when I talk about crypto.
So a couple of questions. One would be, if there's a situation, or in your view, I'm playing devil's advocate here. I'm a fan of crypto, but in your view, when the time comes that crypto is seen as equal or higher value than the US dollar, its comparison to the US dollar would cease to matter, right? And it would just become its own thing.
Yeah, and that's what I see happening over the next 10 years.
Okay.
Is like right now we're like, the dollar is in our mind. It's so valuable. So we're like, oh yeah, Bitcoin's only $7,000. It used to be 20,000. Like that's the joke. Well, that keeps going up. And I really do feel like one Bitcoin always equals one Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is how many dollars it takes to get one. And like I said in the last episode, unless something happens where the code is hacked and like you can double spend, unless something happens like that, just like everything else, it will continue to go up. If you look, even with the Great Depression, if you look at the history of the U.S. stock market, it has always went up. That's the course of human nature. And Bitcoin is still standing after 10 years. Out of all the things that always get hacked in our world, all the corporations and credit card companies, every major credit card company in the last 3 years has been hacked and personal information has been stolen. And these are the financial institutions that every one of us is carrying around a piece of in our wallets. They've been hacked. They should have the tightest security possible. In 10 years, nobody can hack actual Bitcoin. They can hack the exchanges, which is why I'm a big proponent of having a safe offline wallet and being your own bank. But the actual code of Bitcoin has not been hacked, and it won't. I'm betting that it won't. If it does, this is all null and void, and Bitcoin's bullshit. I mean, seriously,
No,
that's the fact that you can't steal it, other than if it's in someone else's custody, other than if you aren't good with your passwords and you don't practice good internet security. Nobody can steal it. As long as that maintains, the macro trend of Bitcoin will be up. Or the other situation is that the US dollar and the US government gets their shit together and everything works out perfect, and we just continue going up and up and up and hit record highs and never have a crash in our stock market, and we're always the best economy in the world, and our dollar is always the reserve currency. So that's possible. If you have that much faith in the United States government and the United States central banks and the central banking system, which, by the way, most central banks are offering negative interest rates on loans, which means they are paying you to borrow money from them. If you really believe in that, well then, yeah, Bitcoin's probably bullshit, regardless of its technicals. But the fact of having faith in the technical aspect of it and shaky, at best, faith in the standard central banking system that is going on in our country or in our world right now, I don't see how Bitcoin doesn't look good to people, And I wish I could expand that to alts, but that's all market based.
Mm-hmm.
There will be other cryptocurrencies that are just as important, but I just don't know what those are right now. And that's why I've been such a big Bitcoin fanatic.
So along with my first question, when the time comes that the Bitcoin, passes the dollar, what value is that having a Bitcoin if it's not a dollar? Are you saying that stores everywhere are, instead of a price tag, it's a Satoshi tag where your Bitcoin cost is per item? Or what is this world? I guess paint a vision of what the world looks like.
Yeah. So I don't see a collapse of the dollar. I just see hyperinflation that won't, the hyperinflation of the dollar, like, you know, we've seen this time and time again. And I think it's really naive to think that the United States is not going to follow history in this case. But we've seen it, you know, in Germany, we've seen it in South America, where, and Italy even, you know, things cost thousands of lira. Like a dollar is like 5,000 lira or something like that. I don't know the conversion rate. It didn't used to be that way. You used to go get bread in Italy at some point. You know, the bread was 5 lira or whatever. You know, they hyperinflated to the point where like they had to like, you know, create a whole new exponent of what their dollar was, and that's what we'll see. Gas will be hundreds of dollars a gallon. The minimum wage will be $50 an hour. You already saw that. We talked about that in the last episode. Like, I don't know what it's like around there. I don't know what it's like around where other people are. But around here, to start working at Walmart, they start at $13 an hour. My first job in my first like full-time job in like 2000, 20 years ago, was like $7 an hour. And I was like, holy shit, fuck yeah, man. That's good money. You know, so we've already seen this inflation, but it happens at a pace and we're so distracted from it that we don't realize it. But yeah, my $7 an hour warehouse job was a good paying job. People were supporting their family, being the only person working in their family, supporting them on $7 an hour in 2000. I'm not talking, I'm not talking like, fucking post World War II, like, no, I'm talking 20 years ago. So the inflation's real and it's happening so much quicker now. It's happening so much quicker and we don't realize it. Anyone who works out, think if 10 years ago, you could get lunch for $5. You're lucky if you're buying lunch for $10 now.
Yeah.
There's something going on, like we feel the biggest crunch with gas prices. And I don't know if anyone remembers back to 2008, just 10 years ago, 11 years ago. But gas prices were $3.20. I think sometimes they were $4 or whatever. And everybody, the world was fucking going to hell because
I remember that.
Like everyone's like, oh my God. We're at like 280 now and no one's complaining about it. And so like that's what I mean is like inflation just kind of sneaks up on you. And crypto, Bitcoin, that is mined, is deflationary in nature. We're about to see that in 2020. That's a big thing that's going to happen this year, is the halving of the price. That's the math in the code is built to be deflationary and not inflationary. The US dollar is meant to be inflationary. It is meant for the central bank Federal Reserve note. That's what the dollar is meant to be created at will and adjusted to keep the status quo. And it's meant to have the rich be richer and to just blame it on capital. It's free market capitalism. Well, where's that money coming from to make the rich richer? The poor don't have anything. So it's coming from the middle class, which is most of the people that are listening to this or listen to us. And that's where I think that a deflationary economy is going to be the way out of that. And right now, the best option for that is Bitcoin.
Yeah, and the middle class at this point is kind of becoming the lower class.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, to finish that thought, like what I see the future is like, it will be impossible to own a single Bitcoin. But there will be a separate market that comes out of the deregulated or unregulated bullshit Binance nonsense that we have now of manipulated shit because they can, because there's no laws,
Mm-hmm.
to where there will be other cryptocurrencies that are valued against Bitcoin and not the dollar. And the dollar will still be around. People will still use it. You'll still get paid from your job with it. But it probably won't be the best asset to hold your wealth in. And so you will either hold Bitcoin or you will hold cryptocurrencies that are valued in Bitcoin. And like, so right now, if you look at the stock market, that everyone considers is, that's what wealth is stock market. Well, those are valued against the Dow Industrial Average and the S&P 500. Those are the two, and the NASDAQ, but that's securities. That's a different thing. But anyway, you can't own like a piece of the Dow. You can't own a piece of the S&P. That's just how everything's valued. And Bitcoin will be the same way, except you'll be able to own a piece of it. And if you got it when it was $7,000, if you got it when it was $3,000, if you got it when it was $15,000, if you got it when it was $20,000, it will look awesome compared to what it will be valued at.
So then, at what point do you sell? Are you just selling portions based off of need?
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I don't look at it like, I'm not trying to play the swings. I don't look at, well, I do look at, but I don't get emotionally involved in the weekly or monthly price differences.
But I'm saying down the road. I'm saying down the road.
Right.
Where...
You just hold it. I mean, when do you sell your 401k? When do you sell your IRA? You don't. You just hold it and it grows. And if you need it, if you need to buy a car, if you need to buy a house, if you have a, chemo to pay for, whatever it is, you have that asset that you can liquidate in order to have the fiat funds that aren't capable because of stagnant wage growth and a crash. Everyone that has a retirement fund right now, that's great. Especially if you have like a job that's, putting in, matching your 401k contribution. Yeah, that's great. But if you were about to retire, man, I would be really scared. Someone your age, someone my age, we're gonna weather that storm. This too shall pass. We'll get through the economic storm. And if you're still contributing, if you don't lose your job because of the recession or the depression or whatever happens, you're going to be buying the dip. You're going to be putting in when it's down. And it'll come back up at some point. That's the natural cycle of everything. But nothing can go up forever. And that's the thing is that, like, my wife, she's not in crypto. She won't be. And that's fine. Like she's in standard, investing in stock markets and government bonds and stuff like that. It'll crash, but she'll still have her job. She'll still be buying in and she'll be buying the dip. And when it grows, it'll grow back. And by the time she goes to retire, it'll be in an upswing again and it'll be fine. So I'm not all gloom and doom with that. It's just, I think the better short-term beneficiary of that cycle will be crypto. And I really think the smarter voices in crypto are saying that. The moon boys that are like, yeah, we're all going to be rich and Lambos and all that. That's all bullshit. That's just, flexing their nuts like everyone else does about everything else. But I think the true understanding of the global economy is solid. And that's been the biggest lesson I learned from not selling at the top. When I had a 6-figure crypto portfolio and I didn't sell, I didn't realize that profit. I didn't liquidate that. It forced me, partly out of, like being like, fuck, I'm an idiot. But also like it forced me to really learn about what Bitcoin means to the global economy. And so looking forward to 2020, we have a trade war that still is not, been determined what's going to happen there. And that definitely is an impact on global economy and the value of the dollar. The crazy election we're about to go into and the bullshit and stuff is not going to make our country look better, which is not going to make our dollar better. Bitcoin is having a halving, and we're also going to have a Brexit and if not a collapse of the European Union because of that, a very rough global economic transition based on one of the larger economies of the European Union leaving it.
Mm-hmm.
And Bitcoin's just going to be standing there, man. And I really, 2020 is going to be very interesting for Bitcoin. It's going to be an up and down wild ride. And I wouldn't even be surprised. Like I've talked about the mining reward halving coming up in May. I wouldn't be surprised if it crashes after that, because nothing really, people are expecting fireworks and nothing really happens.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be surprised to see it collapse. Or, well, not collapse, but 50% crash again, like lead up to it, and then like, oh, nothing happened. And then people just start selling. I could see that happening, but it doesn't change the fact of what that means for the next 10 years of there's half the Bitcoin available going forward for the miners and all that. So, you add that aspect of the timing of the mathematical rules of Bitcoin and its technical aspects with the global shit that's about to happen in the next year. And I just, if people aren't influenced by me and the things I say about crypto to get involved in it, at least start watching it, because it's going to be a really fucking interesting year and a way more interesting decade for crypto.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I know, I know probably only 10% of the people that listen to us care, but that's an important 10% that I'm talking to, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, man. No, definitely. And I think something that'd be cool too, is if, especially on this topic, if people have questions to reach out and email you, because, even I have a million questions about it that you have a firmer understanding on than I do. And I think that could be very useful, because it's hard. It's a hard space to get into, just like understanding how the process of trading a stock is, it's kind of something that you have to spend time educating yourself in. So I think that could be really cool if people reached out and ask questions. And if you're able to answer them, you definitely will, and I don't know, I think that could help nurture like an interest and a deeper interest, for sure.
Yeah. Or if someone totally fucking disagrees with me and thinks I'm being a naive idiot,
that too.
I'd like to have that discussion too, and hit us up and email us and come on the podcast and be like, no, listen, 401ks are safe, whatever, whatever. If I'm being too doom and gloom with that, I don't mind having constructive criticism on my view of that as well.
Mm-hmm. You want to jump in this voicemail?
Yeah. I don't want to get too in the weeds about crypto and stuff, but yeah, for sure. Someone left a voicemail, so let's listen to that.
Cool. This is from AJ.
Hey, Rubin and Stan. This is AJ, a long-time listener. I had a question. I've been catching up on some of your older podcasts and wanted to kind of ask something. Rubin, you made an offhanded comment when you were talking about your Mexico vacation, about how when you were thinking about it and going down there, it was kind of one thing in your mind, and you had some hang-ups about it, like just about being next to so much poverty, or just thinking like sociologically of everything that you're kind of dealing with down there. But then once you were able to kind of like give in and surrender to it, and just live through the experience, you ended up having what sounded like a really, really good time. That whole like process, that whole surrender thing is one of the things that I struggle with the most in my life. And I think like a lot of other people, especially psychonauts that are experienced in seeing and doing things that not everyone else experiences, and are a little bit more sensitive to everything. I think that's something that a lot of people in this community go through. And I wanted to know if you could talk about that a little bit or maybe expand on it, just like maybe how you personally or how any advice for people on how to get to that point of surrender and be able to just like give into an opportunity or give into an experience rather than getting caught up on all the stuff that can kind of like pop into your mind over and over and over again. All right. Thanks, guys. Love the podcast. Can't wait to hear your answer.
Yeah. Well, first off, AJ, thanks for leaving a voicemail. I urge others to follow suit. I think it's a really good component to help direct our discussion and stuff. Mm-hmm. But that's a really good question. I would say, that's well, like we were talking about earlier, that a big message from psychedelics has been this too shall pass. The other message that is a close second, I would say, is this overwhelming thing of like, you are not in control of anything other than you. And like you could expand on that of like, reality is perception, and if you can control your perception, you can control reality. Yeah, I can agree with that. But when you're talking about sociology of demographics and poverty in third world nations that you're visiting, whatever, when you're talking about that, like you're not in control. And you can, there's fractals of that go through everything, of like, you're not in control of anything that isn't you. And so you have to give in. Bad trips are you trying to control it. You have to give in. Bad, when you find yourself in life constantly having bad experiences and like, you're like, I can never catch a break. Part of it's bad luck. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. But the other part is you're trying to make something work that isn't working. And you're not pivoting. You're not switching gears. You're just trying to like have an expectation and control your life to try to meet that expectation, but it's not. And you're not giving in. And that is such a lesson that we learn in a short time frame when we're having a trip and we're having a hard time and we're having anxiety and whatever, and the our setting is not what we wanted it to be, and yada yada yada. So you have to give in to whatever the experience is. But that's a life lesson that you're learning in that moment too. And so there's part of me that wants to be this empathetic, globally aware person that's like, oh, I'm down here in this beautiful resort with my friends and family that love me and support me, and everyone's happy because I'm having this transition in my life and and all this stuff that was positive there. If I were to try to control it, I'd be like, no, I'm a social justice warrior that is upset that this area is impoverished because there's these resorts here and blah, blah, blah. And I want to control that narrative and make that the narrative. Yeah, I would have had a fucking terrible time. But I just gave in. And maybe some people would consider it, ignorance is bliss and whatever. But no, it's the situation that was in front of me. I could have been anywhere else. It didn't have to be Mexico. We could have been in Miami. It didn't matter. I was sharing a long weekend of, love and support and family and gratitude. And I gave into that, and it was amazing. I put all that other shit aside. I can have a discussion any other night of the week about Mexico and its fucking economics and whatever. And that ties into what we were just talking about, like, you know, financial shit coming down the pike in the next 10 years. Like, whatever happens, it doesn't matter, because you can focus on your life and your family and what's important and what's right in front of you. And that's the shit you can control. You can't control any of the other shit, and you have to give into it. I'm trying to be the town crier to let people know, like, hey, this is how you can position yourself to benefit from it the same way that other people that are manipulating it are going to benefit from it. But whatever they're doing, you can't control it. And you have to give into it. And you have to be grateful for the good things that are in your life, no matter what happens. And you know, that's the thing. And you know, I hope to get into more discussions with people about psychedelics, that, like, these lessons are universal, but they're not lessons about how to navigate the other realms of consciousness that are available to us. They're how to navigate the standard consciousness that we find ourselves in every morning when we wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to give into that.
Yeah.
I don't know if that answers his question, but
yeah, no, I think that was a good stab at it. Just how to practice surrendering, really. One of the things that you brought up that I was actually going to kind of have in my answer was expectations and limiting expectations. I think that is such a key to being in the present moment, that you kind of have to try to practice it. That like when I did my last mushroom trip, and I basically set everything up so that I had no expectations, you know, like didn't weigh things out, didn't plan anything, and just went about it. And I had such a positive result. You can parallel that to just standard reality and going into a situation that you don't want to go to. Or, like, for example, I went and had like board games and drinking with my girlfriend's friends, who I had not met, didn't know. And, you know, leading up to it, I'm dreading it, because in my mind, I have all these assumptions and expectations that it's going to be a bad time. I'm going to be awkward. I'm not going to represent her well. You know, these concerns. But as soon as you get there, yeah, you still have like the awkward greetings and all that stuff. But as things progress, you just have to surrender. And that gets to my second point, is practicing surrendering in everyday life. We've talked about this before, on how you could have the craziest psychedelic trip, but guess what? You're coming back to this. You could have ego death, but guess what? You're coming back to this. And so really the work needs to be done, I feel like, on this plane of existence. And I think anywhere that you could practice surrendering in this plane will benefit you in the psychedelic plane of existence, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, yeah, I've talked about that with, you know, my job situation now, that if I wouldn't have surrendered and been like, well, fuck it, this is the only people that offered me a job, like, I'm going to try it, at least it's temporary and whatever, and didn't give into that, like, I don't know, man, I'd be unemployed right now, heading into the winter, going like, I don't know how I'm going to make it through another winter. You know, like it's just the timeline that would have taken me down would have been very difficult. I would have gotten through it. It would have passed. But surrendering and giving up, you know, like I said, I had a 3-year plan, and I gave up on it in 2 years or whatever, you know, like I like giving up on that and surrendering to what was being presented to me, to taking that window of opportunity in life. That's a very psychedelic lesson that has nothing to do with psychedelics. You know, I mean, it's insight that's been gained from those moments of surrendering to the moment. but surrendering to the larger moment is important too. And that's what I did. And it's ended up being a complete 180 in my life and my confidence and my, perspective. So yeah.
Yeah. One of the quotes that you said, on the episode with Elena, number 34, that I've written down a couple times since I heard it, was that the universe rewards us for being in the now. And I think being in the now and surrendering are synonyms almost. The same thing, and I never could explain the feeling that I got from acknowledging but also ignoring distractions that would come into my life while I'm trying to be in the now. Like, I'm trying to learn piano, but my mind's trailing off somewhere else. I never could describe the feeling of warding off that distraction and still just playing piano, but being into playing piano, and feeling the piano and just being into it, not thinking, but just doing it. And that quote just hit it perfect, where it was just like, oh, that's just the universe rewarding you for ignoring all the other bullshit and saying, I'm going to be here. I'm going to do this. And wherever you are in life, that is the only thing you can do, really. Like, there a lot of situations. I mean, I'm sure you could dream up of a situation where, dreaming of a better reality is beneficial. But for a lot of us, if you're somewhere in some place, whether or not you want to be there, or if you don't, or if you do want to be there, the best course of action is going to be being there. I don't think it helps thinking of wanting or not wanting to be there. I think just being there and just going with the flow is what you should be doing, or is the best way to practice being in the now, at least.
Yeah. I mean, time is an illusion because nothing is guaranteed other than now.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to surrender to that. Like, I mean, think about, to equate it to music, like you just were, the best fucking musicians that have influenced the most people and had a impact on human history. Paul McCartney, stuff like that. They don't know how to read music. Jimi Hendrix didn't know how to read music. He wasn't thinking it out. They were flowing. They were surrendering to the beat and to the to the music. There's a reason for that. Like, that's how the universe works. If you want to look at it, we always say the universe, and maybe that's a synonymous term that, like you could say God, Jesus, whatever. The universe is like kind of the term we use if we don't want to like commit to a spiritual figure, maybe, or whatever. But if you do want to look at that as the actual universe, planets and stars and shit, right? Like, we're just on these rocks that are, for whatever reason, formed into spheres, and they're spinning around other things that are, whatever. And like, it's this weird structure that is beyond our comprehension, the size and magnitude and the amount of force. You can't do anything other than to fucking surrender to that and just be happy that, like, this moment right now, which is nothing compared to the time scale of the universe, this moment, you could be just as easily not be.
Yeah.
There's more stuff that isn't in the universe than there is that is. And you are lucky enough to be one of those things that is right now. But that could change at any time. Some fucking asteroid could come through that they're like, I don't know, we didn't have enough budget to know it was coming, and we got about 15 minutes, so, fuck someone and do some drugs because we're all dead in 15 minutes. Like, that could happen right now. Like, and so that's where, like, this universal, like, living in the moment and being grateful for being able to live in that moment and surrendering to that. I don't know any other way to really get what you need out of life other than that, nothing else. Like, you can plan and plan and plan. And life will always throw a wrench in those plans. And unfortunately, one of the biggest causes of depression and anxiety is like, this wasn't my plan. That thing, that attitude of like, this wasn't my plan. What the fuck? You can't control it. So you have to give in,
Oh God, that's funny. I didn't plan for this. I didn't expect this.
Yeah.
Why is this happening to me?
Yeah. And so you have to have the mentality of like, I don't know why it's happening to me, but it is. And now I'm going to happen to it. That's the other thing. Like, you have to be like, all right, well, what am I doing with this then? So.
Great question though. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely appreciate every voicemail and email that we've gotten. And I appreciate anyone who's listened to this 2.5-hour podcast.
The year in review.
So yeah, I mean, I think it warranted a longer one. But yeah, looking forward to 2020. And I hope that through our podcast and our Discord server, we can continue to be a social media beacon of positivity in what is going to be, like I said, the next 10 years, there will be negativity, but there will be a lot of positivity, and I hope to focus on that. But this next year, 2020, social media wise, will be very negative, and I hope that we can continue to be a little enclave of positivity and support.
Absolutely.
And I urge people, as much as we're going to try and push forward and keep doing what we're doing and stay true to our message, I urge everyone that has been a lurker and just paying attention a little bit to our community, I urge you to take that next step and send us a voicemail, send me an email, join the Discord. I urge you to take that next step and stop lurking and start participating. If I could ask for one New Year's resolution for anyone listening, that's what I would say is take that next step, put that beacon out there and see what happens.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, I guess with that, like you said, happy holidays, happy New Year to everyone, and we'll see you on the other side of the next decade, right?
Yeah, man. Sounds good.
All right. Awesome, buddy. As always, thank you for listening to the Help Find the Others podcast. Please don't forget to check out our Discord server to connect with our growing community. The link to join can be found in the description. And if you feel like donating to our channel to help us grow, a link to our Patreon can also be found in the description, as well as some cryptocurrency wallet addresses. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast or have any questions about these topics, please email helpfindtheothers@protonmail.com. If you would like to leave a voicemail or a text message question for a future episode, Stan, what's that number again?
567-233-1335.
Okay, guys, thanks again. And until next time, let's help find the others.